Did you push the button 3 times?
And then the actress told the bit. Oh, sorry, we're live now. Welcome to the stream. You'll notice that a very important person is missing, Gary, because I don't think they have power in South Africa anymore. I think all the little AA batteries have run out. Hold on, we've got a new person here. Who's this? I'll add him to the stream. Who's that? It's John.
Hey, howdy.
How's it going, mate?
How's it going?
How are you? Don't worry, we forgive you. Yep. So what are you here for?
I got one of those good old-fashioned invitations from Sir Gary. So
from Gary, yeah, but he doesn't turn up himself. How rude is he?
He's just ignoring us. I don't know what we've done to offend him. He's just completely ignoring us now.
I think he likes to play the "my power's out" card. So
yeah,
so it's over to you. Take his word for it, right?
I think
it's over to you now, John. Would you like to run the show? Tell us what's happening tonight.
I'm happy to.
Any ideas?
If you wanna run any ideas past me, I don't know. There's a couple of things.
What's your area of expertise, John?
Airspace, fleet management, UTM, all the things.
Yep. And are you affiliated to some commercial enterprise?
Yeah, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Aloft. Yeah.
And what does Aloft do?
We do drone team and airspace management for individuals, commercial entities, governments. We do LAANC. I know that was a topic for today. So we power north of 80% of all LAANC authorizations. So there's been some news there. So I think that's what Gary was curious to get some of our input on.
Yeah, because AirMaps have pulled out, haven't they?
They did.
Yeah. Do you know why they did? Do you have any idea why they do that?
I know. I think there's a couple of things going on. I think, or maybe first, if I can just set a few maybe areas of misconception sometimes around LAANC, if that's all right. So I think a couple of important things to point out that I think is not necessarily clear to the average drone pilot that's going out and getting a LAANC airspace authorization. But a couple of things to point out. First, to become a USS, it's very expensive. There's security elements, there's technology elements, and the FAA does not pay you. So it is up to you to embark on that endeavor and be a USS. And I think it's gotten harder. There's more stringent requirements around audits, data security, in addition to just providing the service, right? And so first part is FAA doesn't, what's up, Gary? So first part, FAA doesn't pay USSs. And number two, the FAA kind of leaves it open for how USSs want to monetize that, if at all, right? So you have some that offer a subscription service. For us, we kind of bundle it in. For enterprise customers, free for individuals. I think AirMap was largely kind of on the free side. So I think you kind of have that dynamic at play where this is becoming more and more costly, more and more stringent. At the same time, it's getting more competitive to offer this. And so, I think my kind of not having any firsthand knowledge, but just more looking outside in, I think when DroneUp first bought AirMap, there was kind of the question of, can those two cultures fit together? Where you have a services company in DroneUp, technology company in AirMap. And I think the biggest question around AirMap at the time was just who's left on that team. Because when they first started, really awesome team that they had put together. After some time, a couple of different CEOs, management changes, there wasn't that much of a team left with AirMap. So you kind of put those together, and I think that was the question around the acquisition with DroneUp. There's my compatriot, Mr. Ziering.
Gentlemen, thank you for the invitation. Apologize for my tardiness.
Don't worry about it, mate. It's Bruce's show tonight, so it's him you've got to apologise. Hello, everybody. I'm here as well. Josh is here. Interesting times. Very interesting times. What are your thoughts on this one, Bruce? So you can guide me as to where we've been already.
I have no thoughts at all. I'm completely agnostic about this. But the thing is, you say about monetization, Air Maps didn't monetize it. Is Aloft going to monetize their LAANC system or what?
We do in some respects. I mean, I think we, one, are growing our business. That's primarily through our enterprise customers that we have that are private industry or government. But we also realize how valuable that service is, and we're trying to do everything we can to keep it free for individuals. So, we're trying to fine tune that balance where we see how important it is to the community, to the industry. Like I said, we're doing, last published number that we had was over 80%. So that's important for us to provide that service. We know how people rely on it. But we're trying to mix in the commercial component as well, because we know it's valuable to people, right? Go ahead, Josh.
And if I could add on a little bit to that, it was, as you guys know, I'm a modeler of the last 25 years. I mean, that's how I got my start in the drone industry, was model aircraft. And I distinctly remember the feeling of saying, man, this really sucks. I don't have enough money to afford an AMA membership, and I don't have enough money to put gas in my car to drive to the AMA field that's 2 hours away to fly the big cool stuff that I want to fly. And I don't have the money for the dues for the membership for the field if I could fix all of those problems. And so really that was kind of a limiting factor for me in being able to participate in model aeronautics the way I wanted to. So we go out of our way to make sure that the 44809 and kind of the next generation of aviators is going to have access to the airspace. We don't want to be a part of shutting down somebody's ability to, make way in this amazing industry and this really unique skill set that's going to be really exciting in the future, right? It already is exciting, but it's only getting better. So it's really important to me as a personal mission to be able to make sure that we're not hindering anybody's progress.
So that doctrine is quite the opposite of the FAA then?
Well, I won't speak for the FAA, but we really do think that drone aviation is a great gateway drug into the field of real aviation.
But is all of this, so your opinion of LAANC and LAANC is that it's working, it's useful, it's effective, and it's ticking the boxes for commercial operators in America that need basically it's a permissions to fly in town, really, I suppose one could say. Is that a short version of it? Is it working, do you think, as a system?
I think you could answer that by saying, what is the alternative? The alternative was writing up justifications and sending in airspace requests to the FAA to have them be emailed around the organization, approved by hand, ticked off one by one. LAANC is the very first step of a programmatic future in which pilots and maybe even autonomous aircraft alike are going to be able to interact seamlessly with all the constituents in the national airspace.
So do you think LAANC will be replaced by this universal UTM that the FAA sort of floated when they did their NPRM for remote ID broadcast? It's not broadcast, but the network remote ID. Do you think that will replace LAANC, or will it actually just augment it?
John, you were kind of our biggest advocate for talking with the FAA about that. Why don't you talk about your blog post a little bit?
Yeah, so I think the FAA set out to kind of say, all right, how do we expand on UTM? LAANC was really supposed to be that first piece of UTM, of programmatic aviation. Remote ID, as it came out, when it was first proposed, was really this all-encompassing element that had broadcast, had network, followed that ASTM standard, and was kind of prepared to lead the path to how do you communicate with aircraft, with autonomous aircraft, with remotely piloted aircraft. What we inevitably came out with was broadcast, which is a one-way over Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. So I look at the kind of compliance requirement of broadcast remote ID as just that. It's checking a box for compliance. It's not enabling aircraft communication that you're going to need to deconflict, they're going to need to use to coordinate your flights. So still some progress to go there, but I think we're continuing to move forward with LAANC with new capabilities. I think as we move into BV loss, you're going to see more connected cooperative elements, right? That's what we really need, not just for drones, but for legacy aircraft. Be cooperative. How do you do that? It's because you're communicating, and it's not a one-way, I'm spouting a signal, which is ADSB or broadcast remote ID. It's really a networked element that allows you to divert, coordinate, deconflict as you need to.
So do you see yourselves as a major part of that network remote ID UTM system when it finally gets rolled out? Will it be a single unified system, or will it be multiple players all networking together with the corresponding problems of speaking to each other?
It's the way things are playing out. It's going to be driven by industry, right? The FAA and NASA write ConOps. They kind of think about it. I was on a panel with one of the heads of FAA UTM. His direct quote was, "We're waiting for industry." Right? They're not going to come forward with this. I think they've been pretty clear that they want to be regulators, not operators. And so it's really on industry to prove that forward. And so that's really what we've tried to do on our platform, is enable cooperative flight. So besides doing, north of 80% of all LAANCs, we also released this notify and fly functionality that lets you publish a live flight volume in real time. Has nothing to do with the regulatory requirement, nothing to do with compliance. Has to do with airspace safety. And guess what? Drone pilots want to be safe. They want to be cooperative. And so we've proven that if you give them tools, they want to do that.
You haven't met me, have you?
Well,
Bruce,
you're the epitome of cooperative. What are you talking about?
Ever the curmudgeon, Bruce, but we don't think you're a curmudgeon. It's also interesting when you say, like, what does UTM look like? We already are kind of deploying UTM to some of our enterprise customers today, where it's not just they need to see everything. They don't need God mode, right? They want to just see where their teams are operating. And like, we have this beautiful live streaming platform that will show you on a map where the drones are flying that are streaming right now. You can go and say, all right, awesome, I want a better view of this. Let's put up 3 drones. And you can go click on the drone whose perspective you'd like to see. Boy, that sounds an awful lot like deconfliction and information and airspace management all in one package. But really, it's just a feature of the larger kind of ecosystem there of being able to do that live streaming securely and across an organization.
Are we not at we're at a bit of a crossroads in that surely we definitely need a digital sky. We definitely need to have a 2050, if not a 2075, 2100 viewpoint, really, of what the sky is going to look for. Is it not being driven by a lot of scheming and dreaming from the AAM, UAM world, which, to my opinion, is like, yeah, great, you can't defeat physics, mate. Are we not making provisions for end users that aren't going to exist, and missing opportunities here, and not onboarding manned aviation fast enough? You've just done a check flight, Josh, but we're not. To me, it seems that they're not joining the party fast enough, and they've got to get out of the way.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. I think that the UAM and AAM stuff is actually really good for the drone industry, because this is something that's very fundamental that we understand. Putting people in aircraft and flying them around kind of predefined routes. If you look at how AAM is starting to make inroads, well, that's something that historically regulators have been very comfortable with. Now we can make a lot of fanfare about its autonomy and its passengers, and this is something that has pretty good standards in terms of how do we get this done. There's a lot of clear path for that, whereas flying robots that have operators that are hundreds of miles away may have less of that. But we see a lot of crossover.
Surely it's easy though. AAM, UAM, just follow the manned aviation rules. Crack on. We don't need anything new, and we don't need to be held back by them. I think the smaller side of things, which is where the money's being made now, is beginning to be held back by people's dreams and schemes.
I'll put on my tinfoil hat for a second, if that's what you'd like me to do.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah, full foil hat, foil hat donned. I do think that there is an opportunity for maybe a little less dreams and schemes, and that's what we try to do. We operate from the bottom up. We work with the operators. We go and we ask for practical solutions to real problems. We don't build things that if you build it, they will come. If you build it, they will UTM. We don't do that. We solve real problems for real customers, and that's keeps us out of the dreams and schemes line of questioning. But it certainly is a methodology that I wish more people would embrace in the drone industry.
Yes, I wasn't meaning you guys when I said that. I wasn't meaning you. That wasn't directed at you, but it's I don't know. I just think in certain regards, because there are now so many UTM companies that have popped up. No, do it our way. No, our way is better. Our way is like this, and then we should do it like this. But not really beginning to move in the same direction. And yeah, I really do worry. You mentioned the piece about model aircraft flying. I really do worry about the implications for model aircraft flying now. But I think you know that. Sorry, I've ranted on enough.
But, or just to add on, Gary, I think one of the things that I think you're right about is this allure of AAM almost makes people say mission accomplished on the small stuff too quickly. Like years ago, the FAA was like, or no, NASA, excuse me, NASA was like, UTM, we've solved it. What's next? You know? And it's like, that hasn't even taken off yet, right? So I think I see that at the state level. It's the big allure, right? We can build vertiports and, you know, have a ribbon cut. It's hard to ribbon cut digital infrastructure. And so I think that's the one negative that I've seen is it's just very alluring to move forward. And it's like, we're still trying to figure out the small drones, recreational, commercial. And guess what? That's the largest number of aircraft, the largest number of pilots in the NAS. Like there's a time to prioritize the largest user, right? The FAA is a safety agency, but they're also mandated to take advantage of the natural resource, which is the airspace. And to do that equitably is still lacking.
Yeah, well, there's the word, isn't it? Is equitably, and you're right. You both mentioned earlier, inherently, I think model aircraft and drone users are inherently safe, largely because their significant other will hit them about the head with a baseball bat if they lose the thing in a tree consistently, and all the money that goes down the drain. So that kind of infers safety, and I do worry that. And really, and let's face it, with the drone industry, it's not about, and the commercial side of things, it's not about the skill, isn't about flying the thing. It's about the data that you're capturing. That's the real appeal, draw, and skill is, and can you do something with that data? Just being able to fly a drone now is...
DJI can. That's why they've been banned.
Oh, well, yeah, that's true. Yeah, okay, fair enough. But, you know, 10 years down the line, when we all started, all of us here, when we all started playing this drone game, you know, it was hard keeping the things in the air. But now they just do, and it's the data you capture. So we're kind of worrying about the wrong bits. And then, so, all right, if I'm, let's thinking aloud out, I have got a survey company, and I've got 25 pilots out in the wild. What can you do for me at what price? Why should I bother? Why should I even bother coming to you guys? What can you do for me?
Sure. Well, there's a number of things. The first is, as a commercial operator, you want your pilots adhering to the highest standards. So a good safety management system and fleet management system is going to be key. You want to know that they're completing your checklists, risk assessments, that they're adhering to your standard operating procedures. You want flight logs. You want all of that data that's required for a good, healthy ecosystem, right? You want to have all of that sort of safety management hygiene built in to your operations. When you compare that with the airspace management, to know that everybody's getting an authorization, to know that they have a central platform, a source of truth that they can manage that with, that really starts to unlock the value of a drone program. At the same time, it mitigates the risk of bringing a bunch of flying Linux computers into your organization. That's not a popular sentiment amongst most IT people. Oh, and by the way, they're not made in America, right? That's a problem. So there's a lot of considerations, but centralizing and verticalizing all of your operations in one place with great transparency into the operations happening under your brand is, we think, a very important piece of the drone safety puzzle.
Okay.
But do we have a safety problem? I mean, how many people have died? We're preemptively solving a problem that doesn't exist, in my opinion, especially with AAM. We are still, I would say, 10 years away from AAM, but we're providing solutions now.
Wait a minute. This is not about people dying. There's a lot of other considerations. We have oil and gas customers that don't want to fly over certain methylhexylene, right, tanks, right? They don't want to do that. So let's get ahead of this. Let's be the proactive safety operators that the model aviation and drone industry is known for. It's not about we're trying to sell you a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. We want to sell you a big boy grown-up solution to a problem that shouldn't exist and won't exist if you use our solution effectively.
So you think that this is a key part of the whole commercial drone structure? But where do you're a hobbyist. Where do you think hobby fits in here? Because we're increasingly, as a hobby, being marginalized, pushed out to the extremes. Soon there'll just be these little freers where it's the only place you can go to fly. And you said you don't want to drive 2 hours and you don't have the petrol or gas to drive to a hobby field 2 hours away. What's going to happen to the urban hobby model flyers who previously flew in parks and school grounds and things with all this sort of takeover of the airspace for commercial drone operations?
No, there's still Part 44809, and we offer that for free. There's virtually no gate that you need to clear to go operate as a hobbyist and controlled airspace. It's no problem, and that's really important to us. We make sure that we don't limit that.
So all right then. So now I've got the model airplane hat on. How does it work? How does your system help me?
Well, we don't make the regulations. I think that's important for people to know. When they come with the pickaxes and the torches, we are not the regulators. And believe me, if we were, there would probably be some changes. But the regulations stand as they are. If you want to fly in controlled airspace as a recreational operator, you're going to need to be able to get a LAANC authorization. That's the rules. And I think that we have the best solution to easily adhere to those rules such that you can keep the regulators happy, you can keep the operators happy, and everyone can go fly their model helicopters in the park on a weekend. I love doing that stuff. It's a joy to me still. So I wouldn't want to take away that joy from anyone else.
So is that how it works right now in America? So right now, if I'm in the city center, I open up your app, and is your one? Oh, sorry, God, this is terrible. It's before you fly. Is that the FAA one? Anyway, open up your app and just get my LAANC authorization from the hobby field, and then away I go. Is that currently what happens?
Well, yep, that's pretty much the long and short of it. But we also do regional laws. So sometimes a city will say, we don't want drones or model airplanes operating in our certain parks. And that's kind of reasonable if you think about it. If you were, for example, having a major concert with thousands of people and you didn't want to have a bunch of crazy people operating over them, kind of reasonable. And that was our privilege to lose as drone operators. Those laws and rules didn't come about because people were operating responsibly. So we also have the local regulations where applicable, that to the extent that we have access to them, we've put those into Before You Fly as well. So, we have the ability for municipalities to reach out to us. Go ahead.
That's only for taking off because the municipalities don't control the airspace. So how do you deal with that? Someone's taken off somewhere and then flying over one of those areas where the local body, would you still give them a LAANC authorization for that?
Well, it sounds like they know the rules really well, and hopefully they're going to be a responsible operator if they're going into the nuance of takeoff versus airspace versus operation area. It sounds like we're really looking for corner cases here. I think more often than not, people get the message, hey, we don't want you to fly here. Maybe they'll be responsible and not fly there, but we want to give them as much possible information and kind of situational awareness that we can.
And just to paint the picture, we've been there. We've been in a park where your aircraft can be and have park rangers come up to us, right? That's the tricky part of being a drone pilot, is there's multiple rule sets, multiple data sets that apply to your operation. And that's part of what we've really built a large database around. So if you go to Before You Fly, which we power, you go to Aloft, you're going to see over 5 million square miles of other data all right, I know my drone can be here. Maybe it's class G, but are there takeoff and landing restrictions? And that's, part of being a drone pilot is getting a lot of those different data sets together.
What did I want to say? I want to say, well, I mean, you're aware that there's a chance that there's only going to be 2,000 freers. Is it freers for model flyers in America? That's a bit of a worry. But then it would seem from Josh's earlier statement that this has been brought on the heads of modelers by their own action, without being too argumentative. Surely it's not right that the FAA is going to. I actually think that's more an AAM, UAM. Type, get out of the sky, we're coming, sort of a thing. But what's
I
your
would
thoughts on that?
also like to push back on that a little bit. There were
All right.
severe problems with the sort of Academy of Model Aeronautics fields before the Frias issue. There was already a decline in the number of places that you could fly, precipitously, might I add, right? And for a number of different contributing factors. It's nice that we can point the finger at the evil drone overlords and you're taking away our model fields, but in reality, there was a number of different, and I've watched it over the last 20 years, a number of different things that caused AMA fields in the United States to go the way of the dodo bird. And it's not simply just the idea that FRIAs now exist, and so they're taking away our opportunity to fly.
I think the other kind of ironic thing that unveiled as we went through this saga of remote ID was people were up in arms about a networked approach, right? Like, oh my God, this is going to cost me money. And now we have a dumbed down rule that's really geared towards law enforcement. But guess what? It's more onerous on FPV. It's more onerous on models. Your DJI is going to get updated. Your Skydio is going to get updated. You're a modeler, you fly FPV, you're searching for dongles right now, right? And that's what we were trying to get out in front of was there's other solutions that don't require, they could be a lot less onerous for modelers and FPV. That's not the case. So you got to bolt something onto anything you're flying. And that's
the least onerous option is non-compliance. And I think a lot of people are taking that. Certainly in some aspects of the hobby, freestyle, proximity, FPV, there's going to be huge levels of non-compliance, and rules that are not complied with are not effective rules. That's the problem.
And that has a two-pronged effect, right? At first, it's great for everybody until the big hammer comes down, and now it's even more onerous, right? So there's a lot to this where broadcast ends up being more expensive for the average person. It requires new hardware. If your drone doesn't get the firmware update to offer you the ability to do this, you got to buy a new drone. You got to look for dongles for your personal aircraft and for your personal FPV stuff. That is not a good solution, right? Not when you have all the hardware that you need sitting in your pocket on your cellular telephone. It's a short-sighted solution.
Yeah, that then easily becomes the network. Remote ID becomes a pay-to-fly thing because someone's going to have to carry the burden of the cost of running all that infrastructure, and end users will pay. And I don't see the recreational community being exempted from that. You've exempted them from your LAANC or LAANC system, but when it comes to pay-to-fly, I think once we get the network system, it's going to be you have to have a credit, use that credit every time you arm or whatever. This has been sort of widely discussed within the community. It looks like that's where things are headed. But the big thing that, as I mentioned before, is my concern that we are trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. Do either of you know how many people have died in America in the last 10 years as a result of recreational multi-rotor drone use?
Wow, very specific, because I was thinking of 2 different accidents that did not involve multi-rotor drone use. So not to say that model aircraft is an entirely safe sport, it has a great safety record, but if you look back historically, there have been problems. I was at an event in 2005. A gentleman got hit by a 50-size helicopter flown by a 4-year-old kid. Let that sink in. A 50-size helicopter flown by a 4-year-old kid. It blinded him. He was in a wheelchair. He couldn't get out of the way of the helicopter.
So how many?
He's
All
Josh's.
the safety regulations. So,
But I was specific about multi-rotor drone use, typical quadcopters and so forth. The death toll from those is 0 as a result of recreational use, 0 in all of time and all of history and the entire face of the planet. Not one person has died as a result of the recreational use of a multi-rotor drone. Yet we are seeing it so regulated. We've got to have these broadcast remote ID things so that the law enforcement can make sure that no other people die. Yet we've got things like pressure cookers that were weaponized in the Boston Marathon. We don't have remote ID on pressure cookers, but they have claimed lives by misuse by bad actors. We have so many things that can be misused and have been misused, and they're nowhere near as regulated as recreational multi-rotor drones that have never claimed a single life when being used recreationally. So don't you think there's a bit of a disparity here? What's driving this inequity in terms of regulation versus risk? Because the risk is obviously proven over entire history to be 0 at this stage, very, very low. So why are we regulating as if people were being killed every day? In fact, the regulations associated with multi-rotor drone use are greater than the regulations associated with ultralights and paramotors. This is where I think the problem is with the FAA. They haven't provided a risk analysis to prove that there is the regulation justified by risk, and it must be justified in some way. there's no historical justification. This is why we're saying it looks like the AAMs and things are stepping in and saying, we're going to need this space, just clear it out. Push these recreational operators to the side because we're going to need it for money, commercial operation, profit. That's you can't blame people for having that perspective.
I understand. Go ahead, John.
So what you described is one of my biggest frustrations because, as you point out, completely accurate, drones are very safe, right? But at the same time, we prioritize airspace for things that we know people will die in. And that was the crux of the BVLOS report published now well over a year ago that says we can stop killing people doing ag, doing all this low altitude flight. They don't need to do that. If we can open up the airspace, create a framework to do more drone flight, like that should be the goal. If you're a safety organization, create more drone flight. By definition, you will have safer airspace. You just have a lot of legacy in there, right? You have the light sport guys, you have the helicopter guys that come in and it's like, no, we share that airspace, but they don't want to be cooperative. They don't want to strap something onto their aircraft. They don't want to communicate and be part of cooperative NAS. And I think that legacy is ultimately the other faction that the FAA is trying to balance against. They're trying to enable drone flight. You got all these, entrenched organizations, pilot, helicopter, etc., fighting that other side.
But remember that broadcast remote ID isn't part of a NAS. It's not for conspicuity. It's not for deconfliction purposes. It's solely for law enforcement to protect us from bad actors who apparently are going to use drones to do all sorts of nefarious things, which we just haven't seen. It's made up. It's illusionary. It is these specious claims that are made for whatever reason. What is the motivation behind it? I cannot understand.
I mean, remote ID, it's come and gone, right? It's done. Like, I get the frustration. Our comments to the rule went completely against where we ended up because we saw how terrible this was going to be. We are where we're at. So we can talk about it all day, but it's at the end of the day, check the box compliance if you want to comply.
What's amazing?
Go ahead.
What I find amazing is that manned aviation can all get together and go, I won't strap a little device in my plane or helicopter to make the world, the airspace safer. It's not going to happen. No. Yeah, drones. Oh, you're getting this, even if it's a bad idea, and we don't care what you say. And that's it. Yeah, if you want to save human lives, which all aviation is meant to be the ultimate safety, and it's all about safety and everything else, and you got to do this to stay safe. They can't do the most basic, simple thing, right? Because they're too busy backbiting, bitching, and moaning like a bunch of babies about having network ID or electronic conspicuity in their helicopters or planes. They are an endangerment to themselves, basically, because they're not willing to take that safety step. And the FAA hasn't got the balls to just go, enough. It's for safety. We don't care what you say. It's about human safety. And yet that seems, I find it so funny. It's ridiculous. It's the same as in the UK. We will get remote ID in 2026, right? That's just a given. But manned aviation will cry like little babies and moan and lobby and pay their money, right? And they will get out of electronic conspicuity. Right.
Well, I'm going to defend manned aviation in the UK a little bit because they're kind of and I'll defend the low end of aviation. What a terrible thing to say, but glider guys, ultralight guys, FLARM, open glider network, all that sort of things. It's very popular, but what's missing, and they're equipping, they're creating the other problem, especially the glider guys. I've said it before. One of them finds a thermal, they're all swarming in the thermal because they've all seen it on the FLARM. So they're actually creating a conflict situation by having electronic conspicuity. But there's the trick I think we're missing. That's being said about the comments about ADS-B is in cubes and most DJI craft, I think now. So we're largely in the ability to get out of the way. But manned aviation could come to the party a little bit harder. And John mentioned earlier that we probably are. The drone and model aircraft, and Josh pointed out that model aircraft was dying a little bit, perhaps in the Xbox era, but I think it would come back now a little bit, if allowed to. Yeah, as the largest airspace user, we could have a bit of equity, but it's not these guys' fault.
No, it's just a shame that America is not a democracy.
My rant is definitely aimed at the FAA and the CAA. Although the CAA in the UK did do a good thing where they did offer to pay a little bit of money, didn't they, towards the ADSB system. If you bought one for your plane, they would give you £250 towards one. Don't get me wrong, guys. The rant is
the FAA did that too, by the way.
Oh, that's good though.
But then we're also what we're talking about is giving people a grant for 1990s technology. Do we really want something that's knocking on 40 years old?
And that's my point about. That's my point when I say creating a solution ahead of the problem means you start out with old technology. And that's what we're doing with AAM and drone delivery. These things are not mainstream. The first AAM practical one will be fusion powered. That's how far away I reckon they are. But we're creating the technology to set it up. So when these things actually arrive, the technology will be 10, 15 years out of date already. And then we'll have to go through the reinvention process. ADSB should have been replaced a long time ago. So we should be timing things more accurately, getting the solutions in place in time for the problem, but not too far ahead of it, because then you simply inconvenience and disenfranchise a whole group that shouldn't be, because they are not posing the risk that they will do perhaps in 10 years' time when the skies are full of AAM and delivery drones.
And that's just a fallacy, as we all know anyway. The sky's not going to be full of delivery drones. It's not going to happen. It will happen more in America than in my part of the world, because America's more spread out. I get that America is vast. I've been there. If you want to go to the shops, you don't walk to the shops. You drive to the shops, where I literally will walk 500 meters. In America, 500 meters, you would drive 100 meters to get to the shop. I get that. I know America's a lot different. It's just the way the culture is there.
All right, if I can stop the America bashing for a second, I do just want to point out, right, that I know you guys are not saying it's our fault, but we have to ride, and I just want you to just perhaps be empathetic for a minute. We have to ride the knife's edge on this of what do we build as we need it, what do we build a little bit in advance, but we can't build something that's so far advanced. So what we try to think about is if there was 5 times or 10 times as many operations occurring every day in the area that our product serves, would we be able to handle that very easily? And would we be able to build for that future? Because if we create 10 times the amount of drone industry that there is right now in America, that's going to be awesome for the industry as a whole, for AAM and UAM, and for the next generation of aviators, operators, and data analysts. It's going to be a great boon for the country. So we have a very challenging situation where it's like we don't want to build something that's just an answer to a problem nobody has. And we also must remain grounded in the fact that there's a strong regulator involved here. This is not Uber, where we're going to go against the taxi medallion people and just say, come get me, sue us. That doesn't really work well in aviation. So there's a lot that we have to consider going into this in order to build product solutions and ideas, bringing ideas to fruition that are going to be able to be, 1, revenue generating, marketable, and 3, the most important, useful.
So here's a question then, Josh. So we reckon we've got about 200,000 operators in the UK, roughly. So it's about 200,000 operators. Now, the UK, this is not America bashing, just before someone else says it. So in America, the UK is the size of one state, if you like. We fit into America 50 odd times. Now, if you expand that out and you said, if you took the UK as an example, and when for each state there's 200,000 operators, how well would your system be able to cope? How scalable is it? Is it going to be easy for you to scale up to those kind of numbers? Or
you know what? I can actually send you the invoice now. Send it, and we're ready to scale up. We've built something that's going to go. Write the check. We're ready.
Awesome.
But we not. I suppose my big concern is that, I hear what you're saying. There's no point building something that, going to go too far and getting too far ahead of it all. But as a whole, and if the FAA is waiting for the industry, do you think industry is providing enough feedback to enough UTM companies to start really nailing down what the specifications are. What do we need to move forward sensibly in the next 10 years? Because I strongly believe that we are going to start having a bigger influence on the manned aviation world as more operations start occurring. I don't think that delivery drones are going to shut the skies everywhere, because come on, who needs a coffee that quickly, really? It's such a first world thing. I get the medical stuff, and that's done. That's an ambulance going through the sky. Everything gets out the way. I completely get. That's how that should be. And we should all do that, regardless of whether we fly model aircraft or just drones, small drones privately. That you completely understand. But to get out of the way for a coffee, that's ridiculous. And it surely can't be scalable. Of course, Bobby Healy would disagree with that. We should have got Bobby Healy on to argue with my context there. But are we going in the right direction, or are we just showing new shiny things every year at the next big show and then not really solving anything? That's the short question.
John, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, I'll quick question or quick answer there, and then I got to run. So thank you, gentlemen, for having me on here. I think Josh can stay on longer. I'm not sure what you mean by all these UTM companies. I see fewer and fewer every day. I think the one interesting thing that we've kind of seen, and I think this goes to the earlier point about how do you do things across such a large area, is we're starting to see states really be proactive, and they're kind of filling this void that has been left at the federal level, not just with UTM, but with regulations. How do you do advanced operations, right? That's where we see, I think much like we've seen self-driving technology, some states are leaning in, right? Come do this, come drive in our cities, come drive on our highways. We're seeing that at the state level because they see this as a chance to increase their value for their citizens, provide infrastructure, provide new capabilities at the state level. And that could be medical drone delivery starting off, right? That's the easier one. Law enforcement, very good, use cases around there that lead to commercial. And as we were discussing before, there's a lot of rule sets at play to how you can operate, where you take off and land, how you operate. FAA is airspace, but there's a lot that can be done at the state level. I think it's cool to see some of the test sites that are moving forward, some of the other state initiatives that say, hey, we want to create corridors. We want to create different sort of capabilities and start to do this today, right? That's where, we publish our APIs. These are open. Our competitors can use our APIs, and they do, right? We're trying to lead by showing what is possible in production today. And I think that is, showing, just like we've proven out, against what Bruce said, drone pilots want to be cooperative. They want to be safe. They want to be a part of this airspace system. And I think it's cool that you're having these various initiatives. North Texas just announced, theirs that we're going to be a part of. So you're seeing other places of power and regulatory influence fill this void. And that just helps, I think, grow this momentum and give comfort to what's going on. So anyway,
at the meetings with the FAA or whatever, then, so if they come in, Texas comes in and says, hang on a minute, now this has been working like this for us in Texas and we think it's very good. Will the FAA, you probably don't have to answer this if you don't want to, will the FAA take more notice of Texas than you? Because Texas is bigger than you, but no offense, man, but you know what I mean?
It's all collaborative, right? Without Aloft providing what we're going to do in Texas, would their program be as successful, right?
Sure.
And so I think that's a lot of what we're trying to enable, where we'll have partners, we'll have competitors in there too, right? But can we showcase safe, advanced drone flight, cooperative drone flight, interactions with traditional aviation? Not that that is going to take that and just run with it, but it shows like, oh, this is how people want to wear their compliance hat, show that you can honor privacy, data security, airspace safety, and still do the cool stuff, right? And so we're getting there.
So you've given us a bit of summary there, but what would you say, because you've got to get some value out of this, what's Aloft's unique selling point? What is it that would make someone choose Aloft over you mentioned competitors, over your competitors?
Well, I think they do 9 to 1, so I'll let Josh take that, but thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks, John. Thanks. Cheers.
Instead of the sales pitch, which I appreciate, Bruce, but so Aloft enterprise platform, top-notch enterprise security, fleet management, live streaming, airspace authorizations. Great. That's the pitch. If you want more, Josh at Aloft.ai. I wanted to talk for 1 second where I sell by not selling. I don't want to sell anybody. That's not for me. So, Gary, you said nothing's happened. And I take the optimistic side of this. I think it's really important that we be optimistic. By the way, you don't get into the profession that I'm in unless you are an optimistic person. My God. So let me take the optimistic side of this. Just 9 years ago, you had to be a Part 61 pilot with a 333 exemption in the United States. This means you have to have a full-scale pilot's license. You can only operate in certain areas under certain crazy regulations. And then, all right, well, now we got Part 107, right? The ability to operate commercially in a general capacity, but you still can't operate in controlled airspace without the ability to, send in a whole description of your operation and get approval from the FAA. Oh, but wait a minute, then we got LAANC. LAANC is really cool. And it's really easy, it's available, it's affordable. It's a fast system that allows you to get access to flying controlled airspace in 90+% of the United States controlled airspace. Really exciting stuff. So, and then I get a firsthand seat. I'm very lucky. I get to see all of the enterprises that started out with 5 pilots and 5 drones and now have 500 pilots and 500 drones. Those stories are happening. Some of them are quieter about it than others because they don't want to give the competitors they have an edge. But we get to see that firsthand. We get to see major companies that you would not think have an aviation program suddenly spool up an aviation program. It's really exciting to watch. So nothing's happening and they're taking away our rights. Yeah, I can put on that hat. But to me, I see a lot of optimism and reason to be excited about the future of aviation, of the aviators, and of the drone industry specifically.
Well, that's great. I don't think I really meant that nothing was happening. What did I mean? I don't know what I meant.
I mean, whatever you want to mean, you can mean.
You can make it mean whatever you want it to mean. Yes, exactly.
It's dementia, isn't it, Gary?
It is dementia. That's exactly what it is. No, I think you just worry from the outside that it looks like, and there are. I know there are plenty of. I see there's plenty of UTM companies that ask me to post stuff on SS News, and I see them. So 9-10 years ago, there was AirMap, there was you, and there was probably Richard in the UK, Altitude Angel. There was for a long time. There was only really the 3 of you in the world. And then Thales, and I worry that I see Thales and some of the big Airbus, and I see them dipping their toe in. That worries me.
Don't forget New Zealand Airways. They've created a UTM that's going to take over the world. They're going to be the UTM supplier to the entire planet, according to them.
See, Bruce, I don't worry about any of this stuff because what we've figured out that the industry has yet to figure out, this is our big secret, it's kind of an open secret, is that there's not going to be one UTM to rule them all. This is not Lord of the Rings. Just imagine if your cell phone could only call people who had the same provider of cell phone coverage as you. That's ludicrous. We've solved these problems long time ago. People say history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. That is super true with drones and super true with what we're doing here. These problems are long ago solved, and anybody who thinks, yes, we're going to have one big, maybe it's a nationalized UTM, that maybe could be the one thing that would make me eat my hat. But in reality, it's going to be multiple providers offering services, collaborating together, and creating a marketplace where this is able to exist for the different needs of the market.
And I think we should make it, I don't know if you mentioned it earlier when you were talking to John, Bruce, but you guys you don't get paid to provide the LAANC service. There's no, and you, in fact, so it actually costs you money to provide the LAANC
We've
service.
spent millions of dollars building, creating, and maintaining and improving the LAANC authorization service. We also don't get paid a single dollar for offering the Before You Fly application with the FAA. We do that because one, it's nice because it's a derivative data set of LAANC, so we can just say, hey, turn off these layers and show this, and we can do that. But we don't get paid a single dollar for that. That takes real time, real effort, real resources, real people coding. Until ChatGPT is able to code before you fly for us, it costs real salaries, real money, and real time and effort to make that work. So we think it's important enough to undertake that and work with regulators and FAA and the community to say, hey, having the information to know about whether or not you can fly is the most important. Whether you decide to listen to it or not, well, I can't really help there, but I can make sure that if you're going to say, screw it, I'm going to fly anyway, that we had accurate airspace available to you wherever you needed it. And it didn't cost you a penny. Before you fly is never going to cost anybody anything as long as we're involved.
The FAA is cunning, aren't they? Because they also have other third parties administer that trust exam at their own expense. They don't pay for anything.
But I think now that the market's cooling off a little bit and we're leaving that frothy era of, oh, drones, here's a venture capital check for millions and millions of dollars. And people are saying, wait a minute, 10 years ago, I thought we were just 2 years away from drone delivery. What's going on? The froth and the bubble is maybe contracting a little bit. And what you're seeing is businesses that are real businesses with real business models and real revenue are continuing to stand strong. Everybody else that's a line item that's costing money, or everybody else, look at Skyward, right? Why do you think they got rid of that? I don't know, but I can probably wager to guess that it was not making money hand over fist for them. So we are in this place right now where, there's going to be real businesses needed, not schemes and dreams, Gary. It's not
like Lilium. Lilium have raised nearly $1 billion. $1 billion for that thing. Ridiculous.
It does sound really good.
But I'm glad you said, I think anyone that has been around for a while, this is a great time because, as you say, the froth is going, which is a good thing because that has been, smoke and mirrors have been fooling people for years, but Bruce nailed it with Lilium, really. But then they're not long for this world. Come on. Every man and his dog's writing physics can't be beaten posts about that. I mean, calling a ducted fan an electric jet, I shouldn't get on my high horse, but come on. It's great for drying your hair. Bruce wouldn't know. And nor Mark. And it fantastic for converting electrons into noise, and that's about it. But anyway, the froth is going, and as you say, it is real businesses doing real work with people that can do stuff with the data. It does make this a very, very exciting time. Now, Squishy says, what are so you can't, it's not sustainable to be running LAANC for free. So it is those business customers that make your money, surely.
Yep. So we subsidize it two ways. The first is we have enterprise customers that use our fleet management solution. So everything from flight logging, checklists, risk assessments, airspace, all built into one neat and tidy package. You can deploy it across your organization. It's safe and secure. We test it very, very thoroughly for all the latest computer hacks and all of that jazz. But the other half of it is larger organizations that want to centralize their LAANC authorizations, we're charging them. We're charging them because they want to have it all in one place. They need the cybersecurity posture of a real big boy grown-up company with big boy pants on, right? Not some company in a garage that says, don't worry, trust us with your data, it's going to be secure. That doesn't work when you're a Fortune 50 company. So we have major enterprise customers that they want to use our stuff. They want to simplify their authorizations. They want transparency into their operations. They want it all in one place, and they're happy to pay for that. And we take a lot of pride in our implementation of LAANC. There's no guidebook like Apple that says it should look like this and it should work like this and the button should be round like this. There's no playbook here. We created this from scratch with a lot of time, effort, expertise, and most importantly, feedback from our users. Every time we get a review on the App Store, I read it. And when it's less than 4 stars, I die a little bit inside. We take this stuff to heart. I'm a part of this community. And we really want to listen to our users and make sure that they understand. Somebody called me the other day on Facebook. They called me a thief. They said, how can you charge for LAANC when there's a free option? I said, feel free to use the free option. I said, you can use broadcast television instead of direct TV. There's no one stopping you. But when you want a real secure solution for the enterprise, for the big boys, We want to be paid for that. I'm sorry. Feel free to use whatever you'd like. And by the way, things that can't go on forever don't. So you got to ask yourself, how are they paying for it to be free? Is it venture capital money? Well, what are they going to do to make money when the venture capital money runs out? These are questions you got to ask, because if you don't know what the product is, chances are you are it.
Quite so. I tell school children that every day. That's what I tell them. Quite so.
When it comes to venture capital, you just add AI to the start of your thing, and you're away again for another 3 years.
We added it to the end of our thing, but
But it was. Josh was about back in the day. Josh used to come in frequently back in the day. Back in the day, it was Bitcoin. Oh no, what's the other way of putting it? Not Bitcoin. What is it? Blockchain. That's the word I was going for. Everything blockchain. So no, it's just moved on to AI. I don't know what the next one will be. But I know Sean, who's in the comments there, Squishy's got some big opinions, all of this, and he's another old timer, FBV old timer. Yeah, I'm going to call him an old timer. He won't like that, but he's not all that old. The world has changed, and I'm glad that you're seeing it from a happy place, Josh, and that you think it's positive. For me, I just wish we had more unified thinking. That is down to safety in the whole aviation community, manned, unmanned, whatever. It worries me that we're not having a lot of joined up thinking, but I do think we'll push up from down below. I really do. Look, we've got to 55 minutes, and this is the only topic you've talked about plainly. So let's just run through the other quick topics. Mark might be on top of the guy in the UK that's been done for flying over a football stadium with his Mavic Mini or whatever it was. Well, are you on top of that one, Mark?
I'm afraid I'm not. I did catch a glimpse of it, but I'm not on top of it, I'm afraid. What I find interesting, and I think RCA is missing a trick here, the flyer ID that you don't need, all you have to do is pay for an operator ID. Sub 250 grams, you pay for your operator ID, read the manual of the drone, and just go out and fly. I do think that they're probably going to have to bring in the flyer ID for sub 250 grams, just so people get a bit better training, because people clearly are, I want to say, a lack of common sense, maybe. But yeah, I'm afraid I've not kept up with that. There was another one in Lincolnshire where someone hit a hotel as well. So a drone managed
it just couldn't get out the way.
Anybody killed?
It just couldn't dodge quick enough.
The hotel literally jumped in front. Actually, just local to me. So
it sounds like a police helicopter incident to me.
Well, funny enough, someone put it. I saw it on the DJI UK mini group. It quickly disappeared. They said, "Oh, it was up on top of the entrance porch."
Rescue it, didn't he?
Yeah, he wanted someone to go and rescue it, and the police went and rescued it for him.
Yes.
And he recorded himself, so he actually got a video. So they knew who it was because the guy had videoed himself, and they got the info off the SD card, which is, of course, the best thing you can possibly do for the police. Always record yourself at the beginning somewhere, capture your details. And they got a bit of a telling off. What amazed me was the police actually went to the CAA and says, what do you want us to do with him? Instead of just looking at what they could do, they actually went to the CAA and says, what should we do, kind of thing. And it was just education in the end. And they
This speaks to what Josh was saying. Josh was saying how the use of drones will make aviation safer because we're taking people out of cockpits and we're using them for ag and that sort of stuff. It'll reduce the risk or the death toll from manned aviation. Remember in the UK when that police helicopter landed on a pub and 13 people died? Yeah. When a drone lands on a pub, nobody dies. So this is the whole thing. The drones have the potential to make aviation safer by taking people out of the air.
But we're preaching to the choir, though, aren't we? We're all converted here. We'll say this all day long. We all know this.
I was thinking about urban air mobility, because everything, is urban air mobility now. That's the new one as well. That's the big new push, isn't it? That's the big one we all want. And what I find interesting is we've had urban air mobility for years in reality. It's really funny. There was this YASA screenshot, I think it was, or was it FAA? It was one of the two. I think it might have been the YASA one. And it showed you urban air mobility aircraft flying around.
That was CAA New Zealand, wasn't it? Wasn't that thing I posted?
Yes,
yeah.
Sorry, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that was it. Sorry. And it had urban air mobility, drones, and then it had helicopters. And I was like, hang on a minute. Urban air mobility, helicopters been landing and operating in urban areas for years. They are
but they didn't use vertiports, they used heliports. Totally different.
It's absolutely crazy, because there's all this thing about vertiports, and I'm just looking at maps and I'm just going, so in the UK
I've had Vertiport Africa now here for 6 years, and still nothing's arrived. Nothing's arrived yet. I've got one here open right here. I ask you.
There are loads of heliports in the UK, little ones. There's loads of farmers' fields with small runways and airfields. Urban air mobility, because you're not going to see, I don't think, loads of these things flying into cities. I just don't see it, because where they're going to be able to operate and land, major cities are already built up. They're already full of all infrastructure and junk already. Our neck of the woods, because our towns and cities are so old, there's no space to suddenly go, let's clear out 100-meter square area to stick something to land in the middle of the city. Don't work here.
Can I share my? I'm excited to tell this. Can I share my conspiracy theory on where all the vertiports are going to be?
Yes, you did put your tin hat on.
This is tin hat fully on. I'm not allowed to talk about this at the office anymore, because I would get so. They used to bring it up to rile me up, and I just couldn't get off the topic, and it would just ruin the entire afternoon. I think it's going to be shopping malls. So with the demise of major retail, think all of these kind of anchor brands, the Bed Bath and Beyond, the big box stores, right? Where it's like, oh, hey, there's no more. It's everything's from Amazon now. So now the death of the shopping mall. But what are shopping malls really, really close to? Well, let's see. They're centrally located. They have a ton of parking. They have the stupid pretzel and Cinnabon place. That sounds an awful lot like an airport to me. Now we just got to shore them up structurally, put in the cabling, put in the power so you can recharge the silly things. And there's going to be a phoenix rising from the ashes, and it will be shopping malls as vertiports. Now,
but I think actually there's a chance, not so much for the AAM, for the manned stuff, but I think there's a chance, because as you alluded earlier, model aircraft flying is in decline, and so is manned aviation around the world as well, light sport aviation. And all these little airfields being snatched up because they're flat and they've got concrete on them and they've got good drainage, etc., etc. They're great for building. But I have a feeling delivery drones might be the savior of a lot of small airfields as well, or be part of the mix to help them keep open and have manned flights and delivery drones going into the same little airport that was perhaps had a chance of closing. So I
had a little Christmas project of every mall in America with a 25-mile radius and the density of the population. I didn't get done with it before New Year's, but pretty exciting to think that the malls have a lot of opportunity, even if they go out of business.
But I haven't seen a single render of that from these urban air mobility.
No, this was my $10 billion idea that I just shared with you and your viewers.
But it's all sexy ladies getting out of this slick modern aircraft thing that can't possibly fly. It's not people with Walmart bags going in and out of the big box stores.
Well, now we've got AI.
You're not wrong. I don't think you're not wrong.
Ask ChatGPT for those renders. It'll just churn them out on demand. It's great. It was stable diffusion. Then you can have anything you like.
I will. I'll be battery. Yeah, Cliff's saying we've been on the verge of a battery breakthrough. That just hasn't happened. Somebody further up, I've forgotten who mentioned those drones in Moscow. I think that might turn to be a bit of a turning point in the industry, and they look to be big Chinese canards as well. So they weren't VTOL equipped, so they flew from a runway somewhere or a prepared area, shall we say.
Or was it a red flag, false flag operation by Russia to justify? Yeah, I would say it was.
Or was it a false flag? Yes. You reckon it was?
I think so. I think it's just that gives them justification, firms up support from the Russian people, you know, friends in adversity, all that sort of stuff. I think it was just a very political, cynical move.
Well, how far they would have to have flown? How far from it?
Oh, they weren't flown from Ukraine.
No.
That's like 800 k's away. But the fact that they were things quite big and something that needed a runway put me in the same mind as Bruce. Really, it's like, crikey, if you've got 30 of those going, then, and also that the fact that they managed to shoot them down, it's like, oh, okay, were you really expecting that sort of a attack in that area? It is the area of Moscow where diplomats live and stuff like that, and the intelligentsia. But yeah, it does look a bit, I don't know.
Also, I think Russia was trying to portray that if the West gives Ukraine long-range weapons and F-16s, they're going to use them to attack Russian soil. That's, I think, trying to diffuse that option.
I actually think the next few days could be the interesting one on the Ukraine anyway. I think once the ground stuff starts, that'll become interesting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, and all of us, again, the choir, we've all been spouting the use of or how effective small unmanned aircraft systems are, and the military.
And the amazing thing is they've got all that low-level unmanned aircraft, helicopters, no UTM.
Yes, I didn't think they would go there, but yes, yes, no UTM. You're so right. You're absolutely right. Have you seen the numbers? They reckon the Ukrainians are losing 10,000 a month. But so kind of in warfare scale, it's throwaway items. And then the last thing is the Inspire 3. Are we inspired or are we meh? Yeah, I am as well. Nah, okay.
Unusable by US government agencies.
The Inspire 2 is such a cracking machine. I don't know who's going to do the jump. Who's going to pay that kind of money? I mean, it will be high-end TV and film stuff, but I don't see a massive need to jump from an X5S or the X7 on an Inspire 2 to jump across. I don't know.
But again, it's another beautiful demonstration of how the industry is maturing, in that the equipment is only small increments now. It's not the huge leaps that we're having. That's another great sign that okay, people know what they want, and the manufacturers know what people want, except for in America where they can't use the things. But they know what they want, and they're bringing it, and it's just little improvements. So it's all good. It's good news from the industry viewpoint, I think.
Yeah, I mean, now it is. The sensors on cameras and stuff. We're kind of there now almost. We need a tech jump of some kind, really, which is interesting. We need, it'd be nice seeing new good sensors, tech. I mean, the price of these things is astronomical, but then there's still the chip shortage kind of still kicking about a little bit in places, which is just keeping electronic goods still a little bit pricey. Hopefully that will come down as we start to catch back up again, but it's still happening out there, chip shortage a bit.
But I think the price is probably going to stay a little bit high, because now the businesses understand how to make money with the things properly, and they're not speculating with it. The manufacturers know that they're selling something that's worth something to that business, so they ain't going to be. It's probably getting better for DJI by the moment, because they don't need to drop prices to try and be competitive or relevant, because they are, and people are making money.
Well, I would also encourage you guys to think, like, let's just rewind 3 years. If I went to you and I said, you can get an Inspire, and let's just call it an Inspire X, for this amount of money, it has 50 megapixels, whatever the specs are in the new one, you'd be like, you're out of your mind. There's no way you could get that much drone for that much money. So you still get significantly more drone for your money than you did even a few years ago. It's just the baseline price has not come down, to your point.
Yeah. So, what other news? 'Cause we're an hour and 8 minutes over now. So, what other news have we seen before we go? Going once, going twice. Thank you very much for coming, Josh. You guys very sporting coming along. With the demise of AirMap, which I must admit I'm not sad to see them go, and it's not really the original AirMap either. It was the revamped new guys, wasn't it?
So does that mean I can't apply to them and have a no-fly zone over my house now?
Well, there you are. That's Back to the Future, isn't it? That's
I'm not going to dance on their grave. You know what? They tried to do something, and we didn't see eye to eye on what they were trying to do. But to me, it's a valiant effort. I don't see eye to eye on the model of what they were trying to accomplish, but it takes a lot of guts to do something like that. So I'm not going to kind of dance on their grave. And I would also like to thank all of you for being very sporting. I enjoy this stuff more than you guys know. I'm a modeler. I'm a member of this community. I'm also trying to run a business in this community. These are all very challenging things to do as the same person that has a conscience. So I want to thank you all for the sporting time today. And please, I would be happy to be back anytime. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Love to have you along. And I forgot to mention earlier on, Scott, what's he got there? He's 8.5. Did you only score him 8.5, Bruce? I see. I didn't know we were doing scores. Hang on a minute. Find a pen. Scott mentioned that thing that flew in. I'm going back up to the comments. I forgot the name of it. That very large delivery drone that they want to fly miles and miles and miles, i.e., right across Europe.
Dronemics.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, they flew last week. So that's interesting to watch. I personally think, before I'll make this my last comment, I personally think that converted manned aircraft will eat their lunch because that'll be Black Swan. That's it. I think.
Well,
that's
Elon Musk just put some of his robot men in there with the AI, and away you goes. The whole problem solved.
Already exists with
the Cessna Cargo, the Cessna Cargo one. That's the one to watch out for.
The Alea system already does that. It's a robot arm that can fly anything. But anyway, with that, dragging things on again, I'm going to say cheerio and enjoy a few moments of elastic trickery here on my own. So, Divya, wherever you are in the world, thanks very much. Thanks very much, Josh. Thanks for holding the fort, Bruce. Thanks to Mark. See you all again next week, 2100 GMT. Take care, everyone. Be safe wherever you are in the world. Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye for now. One button click. Oh, no, don't do that. Do that one.